STIKS, Man Hive. Chapter 1. Life is unfair. You make far-reaching plans, make efforts to implement them, and suddenly a giant fly swatters over you. Something irresistible interferes with your plans, crossing them with a thick black line. And you do not always realize it at once, because fate knows how to arrange everything, so that you do not notice how you go down the slope in a halo of debris of your ruined future. Today, the usual dirt of the forest road was the big-caliber weapon of fate. It shot without a miss, smashing to pieces the life of a random victim, planned for years in advance. All you had to do was to delay it for a while, to prevent it from crossing the line, beyond which you do not even realize that you have avoided a very difficult turn in your biography. On this seemingly ordinary day, Igor did not intend to get into a bind, which dramatically changes the future of those who at the wrong time finds themselves in a place from which you should stay as far away as possible. His plans were simple as usual, and there was no place in them for adventures dangerous to health or life. First he had to get to town, then quickly wash off sweat under the shower, change clothes and go on a date, which he had arranged with the cute Svetka the day before. He had a fail-safe surprise prepared in advance, which usually makes a woman's heart softer. Then, and prolong the already ugly protracted ritual of courting will not have. That is, perhaps the night will not be at home. He was, admittedly, right on the latter point. The trivial life of a young single man, the unpretentious plans, everything was predictable until the outcome of this unfortunate day. The specter of things to come, of which Igor could not even suspect, began to interfere with the planned in passing, a few hours before everything began to turn in earnest. The incantation was to take place in a certain place and at a certain time, but for this, the victim had to be slightly slowed down. The faithful UAZ, which had seen a lot of things and managed to get through where the owners of expensive jeeps wander on their own in search of a tractor, was hopelessly stuck in the Kotka corner, a place where innumerable experienced drivers and novices fell victims to the treacherous mud there. Little depended on a man here. One passed almost peacefully, the other after a couple of minutes moves in his footsteps and lays the car belly up on the mud. Such a mystery of nature. And what do you want to do now? To look for the tractor is not an option. To go back to the rig, too far, not in time to catch the light. Up to Hatka is much closer, but no machinery in an abandoned village, and there are only a few shabby life of scourges, which can help or ignore. It all depends on the unpredictable changes in their mood, and the concentration of alcohol in the blood. You can get to the track too, but again, it would take too much time. Anyway, Igor had to roll up his sleeves and get into the sticky mud. She wasn't exactly eager to part with her four-wheeled prey, resisting desperately, making her sweat to the point where Igor began cursing his hasty decision. He would have been better off going to the highway, hitching a ride there, and solving the problem of the stuck car tomorrow. He was hopelessly late for his date, and worst of all, his phone was nothing more than an alarm clock and a camera. There was no connection, and it was unlikely that it would appear in the next millennium. Is it possible to try to climb a tall pine tree and get it from there? Nonsense. That wouldn't work in a narrow, damp valley surrounded by high hills. The mud gave up when little more than an hour remained before darkness. By that time, the starter had started to have problems, and the last tug had damaged the muffler, so the engine was roaring like a wounded beast. Even with losses, but now the Uwazik is free and on the move. The only thing was not to stand up now because of breakages. In this car, almost everything can be repaired with wire, pliers, and such mother, but it will lead to additional loss of time. Igor overcame the remnants of off-roading, got to the highway, and rushed toward the city at the highest possible speed, but was soon forced to slow down sharply because of the thick fog. It happens in the evenings in these parts, but the current fog broke all records. The headlights were resting against a monolithic milky wall. The asphalt was barely visible for a few meters, and then there was an impenetrable haze. Sveta was already languishing with impatience, biting her painted nails in anticipation of the call, and he still knew where the hell he was from the city. That's how you plan a nice evening? Stopped on the curb, turned on the emergency, walked away from the humming car, which he feared to turn off because of malfunction with the starter. Here, a dozen steps away, its noise would not interfere with a short phone conversation. It seems that the new passionate woman is not quite a dumb hen, should understand everything, forgive, and even be sorry. And if she doesn't get into the situation, fuck it. Finding another one is no problem at all. It's not that he finally found his destiny, with which he's ready to live until the grave, but in the eternal desire of the male to get laid. Pitched the tube to his ear, grimaced. Somewhere nearby was definitely burning some disgusting chemicals. The smell was as if an open bottle of acrid acid had been held to his nose. Maybe it wasn't fog at all, but smoke from a fire? But what could be burning on such a scale here? The distant suburbs are a few villages, poor farms, 4 clay pits, only a couple of which are active, and an almost abandoned railroad station. Maybe there, in a dead end, a train with tankers puffed up? They carry a lot of nasty stuff. The telephone was suspiciously silent, and the reason was clear at a glance. There was no signal from the cellular network. It was strange because the cell phone had always a good signal here. Why wouldn't it work if the big city was within arm's reach? There are towers on every hill. Even fast internet can be enjoyed. A huge black SUV rushed out of the fog, swerved at the last moment to avoid a head-on collision with the UAZ. But the maneuver was not timely enough. It landed with a wild force, smashed to pieces the corner, opened the jaws of the hood, and flashing the surviving headlight, went skidding along the roadside, scattering gravel in all directions with force. The last thing he did was to hit the metal guardrail with his side, crumpled it and himself, and stopped. Yes, Igor clearly had a bad day. However, now was not the best time to think about the injured 4-wheeled friend. It was empty, and the SUV hardly drove itself. The impact was not a weak one. People could have been seriously hurt. Igor rushed to the driver's door, squeezed the handle, pulled it. Nothing happened. Again, and here was the result. With a laborious screech, the door yielded. Almost immediately, all resistance disappeared, obediently swung open. A heavy bald man of about 35 fell out from under the swollen airbag, awkwardly rose, holding on to the battered car, began to look around frantically, muttering something indistinctly, and shaking his head in frustration. "Are you all right?" Igor asked. Staring at him, the driver of the SUV wiped blood from his lip and muttered muffled, "Who are you?" "I'm from the car you kissed." He turned around, stared at the damaged UAZ, and bellowed with tears. "Where did you buy your license, you peckerwood? Who taught you how to drive?" Igor was not the least bit taken aback by this attack. He had seen worse, and in addition, a lot can be put down to stress after a serious collision. So without unnecessary aggression, but very firmly replied, "Slow down, and don't yell at the top of your lungs either. It's not a funeral." The car was not moving, but standing with its lights on emergency mode, pressed to the edge of the curb on the right side. See for yourself. This is a double lane, and for some reason your hearse was going so fast on the oncoming lane, it looked like it had been pussy-footed. You see the fog? The fog is such that even 5 kilometers per hour is a Formula 1, and you were going at least 50 or 60. So which one of us bought a license? Cut the crap, smartass. We'll see who was standing where and how he drove. No problem. Igor shrugged his shoulders. Let's call the cops. Let them sort it out, do I mind? Are you alone in the car? What? Oh, shit! Lialia! The stranger, as if awakened, briskly stuck his head into the bowels of the car, and in the voice of a gentle father, bent over the cradle, said, "Lialia, how are you? Not badly hurt?" I twisted my nose on that pillow, answered a whiny, not too melodious female voice. Maybe even broke it. "Grisha, I'm afraid. What shall I do now? You can't find decent doctors anywhere at this time of night." Now we'll solve everything, honey. Sit quietly. Now will be all." The man began to frantically run his finger over the screen of an expensive smartphone, while muttering something vaguely under his breath. Then, still not finding what he was looking for, he asked, "Do you know the phone number of the clinic? You know, how to call the doctors?" "I do, but there's no service here." "You're kidding, I just talked, everything happened." "Go ahead, keep calling." "That's right, it's not showing a single bar." "What the hell? Is that what's happening to you too?" "I told you, there's no connection. What's not clear?" "Lialia's worried, her nose is really bad. She recently had an operation on it. She likes to make it beautiful. I need a doctor quickly." "Is your car running?" Igor shook his head.